Hi everyone, welcome to Sunny Day Discussions. I am Sunny Day. Today I'm just going to try something new and kind of just go off the cuff and rant a little bit. I want to rant about how the GOP seems to think that they are the majority opinion, in the fact that for some reason they're convinced that the results of the Ohio vote was because the voters were misinformed or disenfranchised in some way, rather than the possibility that they could be wrong in the fact that most people don't want abortion banned. Most people want Roe v. Wade back, and that was a compromise. Most people want access to abortion at least in the first trimester. But for some reason, Republicans are convinced that they are the majority opinion in this way, even though that since Roe was overturned, they have lost over and over and over again. They're still convinced that they are in the right and the majority. And they're convinced that with everything that they are in the majority, even though the voting has proved them wrong. Like in Mississippi, there is a little girl who is starting 7th grade. But she's starting 7th grade as a mother. Because of this draconian pro-life movement that Republicans are fighting for. They're waging war against freedoms. And this little girl who was out in her backyard filming TikToks, some random guy comes into her backyard and assaults her. And because her mom thought that she was too young to understand the consequences of sexual acts or what constitutes as rape and what's consensual, and she just thought that she was too young. And in my opinion, that's a mistake. You should teach them as young as as soon as they're able to understand and grasp. So the little girl suffered in silence. She didn't tell anybody. She became scared. She stayed in her room. She became sick, violently sick. And when her mom finally took her to the doctor and found out she was pregnant, it was too late in the state of Mississippi to access an abortion. Because of the fact that she didn't report it, there was no police report, there was no evidence of, the perpetrator was not caught. Because she couldn't prove that she was assaulted, she was not approved for abortion. So now, a 7th grader is a mom. She's going to school as a new mom. And these same people that think that this is okay are the same people that don't think that these kids at this age are capable or mature enough of learning about the LGBTQ plus community. They're convinced that the kids can't handle that. They can't handle learning that other people love other people differently than what they've been taught their whole life. They can't handle the fact that a woman could love a woman, or a man could love a man, or a woman could be born a female but then transition to a man. The GOP thinks that kids can't handle that, but they can handle being assaulted, molested, and having a child. There's something backwards with their way of thinking. And it's evidenced in their lack of empathy towards anyone who is struggling, their lack of empathy towards anyone who is not white, straight, cis, and Christian. And I know I've gone over this before, but today's episode is about ranting, so I'm going to rant. And it's incredibly infuriating, the hypocrisy that comes from these so-called Christians when they are the first ones to persecute and demonize the unhoused community because they're convinced in their warped little view of the world that all you have to do is work hard and you'll succeed in life. And maybe that used to be the case, but it's not anymore. Wages have not kept up with inflation. It's just, you can't just work hard and succeed in this country anymore. And the only hope I hold out for this country, because of the attack from the Republicans on all social issues, on democracy itself, is the younger generation, because the younger generation is trending far more progressive, almost on the verge of socialism, because I agree with them in the fact that the government needs to provide basic necessities. They need to make sure that their people are housed and they're fed and they're warm or cool in the summer as things change climate-wise. The government should do that. The government should make sure that there is a living wage, make sure that there is affordable housing, make sure that people aren't hungry, should make sure that there is access to medical care, because that is a human right, not a privilege. You shouldn't only be able to get medical care if you're wealthy. And this country has forgotten its people. This country has forgotten its people in lieu of its corporations. And the hypocrisy coming from the right about socialism and handouts to the needy completely falls on its face when it comes to major corporations and billionaires and millionaires. They're more than happy to have the government bail out corporations. They're more than happy to take socialism for the ruling class. But when it comes to helping out the people that need it the most, Republicans have that whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps philosophy. And for the party of freedom to be so fighting against freedom so hard, it shows their hypocrisy. And that's one thing that just angers me and enrages me, is hypocrisy. And the GOP has kind of become no longer an honorable political party, no longer a valid political party. This country now has the various forms of Democrats, such as corporate Democrats, progressives, liberals, leftists, all of that, and a cult. And the few people who are in Congress, who are on the right, who are not members of the Trump cult, the maggots, are so cowed by the vitriol and violence that comes from this cult that they don't speak up. It won't be until we hold everyone on the right accountable who is involved with this Trump cult, the people who are actually actively trying to undermine our democracy. They're actively trying to make this a theocracy, oligarchy. Well, it kind of is an oligarchy already. They're just, today's conservatives, the maggots, are the antithesis of democracy and freedom. Yet, every time they scream that Democrats are doing something, like they're taking your freedoms away, the whole common, every time a Democrat gets in power, they're coming for your guns. No one is coming for their guns. No one. But they can use that to rile their base. And when they rile their base, violence happens. And yes, violence happens on the left too. In fact, I think there was a lady who was just arrested. I just saw the headline, so I don't know any of the details. But there was a lady who got in trouble for threatening to shoot Trump and his son or something like that. So yeah, it does happen on the left. But you have the left violence and you have the right violence way up here. There's no comparison. And I hear people who don't like politics, that don't like politicians, say that they're all the same. They're not. Yeah, there's corruption on both sides. 100%. But when you look back historically and you look at Republican presidencies versus Democratic presidencies, and the amount of convictions for Republican presidencies is overwhelmingly bigger than any Democratic president. And Trump's tops them all. He had far more people convicted and indicted than any other president in history, including Nixon. And so he just kind of became Nixon on steroids, you know. He and I'm not convinced that Trump is intelligent. I'm not convinced of that. I think he's charismatic, and I think he is a salesman. He is the epitome of a used car salesman, the kind that sells you everything you want to hear to get you to purchase his product. And the maggots have purchased his product 100%. And it's infuriating, because the fact that the corruption has just taken hold in our government and all the entities that go along with it. It's just weaved its little threads of corruption throughout the entirety of it. And the only way, I think, to combat that would be to get money out of politics. But there again, you have the corporate Democrats, the entirety of the Republican Party, all fighting against getting money out of politics. And if I could change just one thing in this country that would make everything better, is I would eliminate greed. Because greed has become basically the mantra of the US. Greed causes people to not have a living wage, because the corporations think that they need to have those millions more in their coffers so that they can have their third home in the French Riviera. So that's greed there. The greed from the landlords, or the people like BlackRock who come in and they buy up all the housing and then charge exorbitant rent prices that no one can afford. That's greed. The military's budget is huge, and they can't keep track of their spending. But they're paying for little parts that cost like $5 to make. They're paying like $300 to get this part, and that is greed. When you have a monopoly of media like Fox News that came in and just bought up all sorts of stuff, you have that control, that greed, that hoarding of information so that you can disseminate what information you want. When you have companies buying each other out so that there are only one or two companies in the entire country who produce a product that is needed and necessary for people, that makes them able to charge whatever they want to charge for it, because people have to pay for it. It's the whole insulin thing. Insulin should not cost thousands of dollars a year. It shouldn't. When it doesn't cost much to make, and I know we have to have funding to explore science more and find new drugs that combat other things like cancer, but there should be government funding for that, and there is. But you have these main pharmaceutical companies that are in it for the profits. And they charge America so much more for their drugs than they do other places, because they know they can. Because they know that we have a healthcare system that allows it. And for all those people who are opposed to universal healthcare, I know I'm going off on all these different topics. It's hard to follow. I apologize. But for all those people that disapprove of universal healthcare, and the arguments I heard from people that I know that are opposed to universal healthcare was, well, I don't want to pay for someone else's healthcare. How the hell do you think insurance works? You pay in every month or annually if you want. Do you get that money back at the end of the year if you're lucky enough not to have to use it? No, you don't. It goes into a collective, and that collective goes to the people that make those insurance claims that needed that health care. But you're also lining the pockets of the CEOs. So you're doing exactly what you complain about Medicare for All possibly being, but you're also helping to enrich the already wealthy. So the argument just doesn't fly, and I just don't think that people understand how it works because there is a monopoly on the right in media and on the left in media. And they're corporations. Therefore, the only news that they share with their viewers is news that is good for corporations. And they convince their viewers that anything that helps the average person hurts the corporation, therefore it's bad. And I watched an interview with a guy, and it was quite interesting because I know that when you get down to the nitty-gritty with people on both sides of the aisle, we all have the same issues that we're facing. We all have the same concerns, the same fears, the same struggles. We all have that one person that we know that's been battling addiction. We all are struggling to pay our rents, to pay for insurance, to pay our medical bills, to buy food. We're all struggling to find affordable childcare for those who have to work. That is a universal struggle. And everyone agrees that we need to do something about that. But you have media and politicians that think that helping people who need it will hurt them, that they will lose their standing, that they will lose their money and their power. And that is why so many people in government, so many people in corporations, so many wealthy people don't want any sort of socialism, and why wealthy people keeping the people at each other's throats, stoking the hatred and vitriol between the parties. Because when you're distracted by that and you're busy saying, look what the left is doing or look what the right is doing, you're not seeing what they're doing, and that is their main goal. And so as far as I'm concerned, we need to get money out of politics. We need to get Republicans out of office. And Republicans need to do some soul searching and figure out where they want to go as a party. Because right now, the people aren't having it. And if they want to compete and be taken seriously, they got to lose this maggot virus that has taken over. They've got to lose it because the majority of the people don't want it and don't agree. The majority of the people want trans people to be able to access the healthcare they need. They think mental health needs to, I've said it before, they agree with access to medical care, affordable housing, affordable wages, or living wages, all of that. We all agree on so many things. But the wealthy elites and the wealthy politicians stoke that conflict to distract us. So we need to stop being distracted by the culture wars that the media and politicians are instigating and start focusing on what the politicians are doing. And then I think we would be a lot more united and vote accordingly. So that's the end. I hope you enjoy the rant. There was no news involved, but my family gets tired of hearing me rant, which is kind of why I started this channel. So if you share, subscribe, click that bell, the whole routine. Vote, no matter how big, how small, how inconsequential, your vote matters. And read everything you can get your hands on. And I particularly recommend reading the indictments for Trump and the bills that Congress puts forward. It's hard. It's boring oftentimes. They have a lot of the languages that most people don't use. But read it, because you'll find that Republicans lie about it and Democrats spin it. So that's all. Thank you, and I will see you next time.